Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the heart of Maplewood, a quaint suburban community, life thrived in the rhythm of chirping birds and children's laughter. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew one another by name and felt somewhat shielded from the chaos of the outside world. Canvas-covered porches adorned with flower pots graced each home, while meticulously manicured lawns bore testament to the pride its residents held in their little haven. But beneath the veneer of tranquility lay an unsettling truth waiting to surface. It was a crisp autumn morning when the first signs of trouble emerged, leaves scattered on the sidewalks and the scent of caramel apples wafting from local harvest festivals contrasted starkly with the fear that would soon grip the town. An amber alert echoed through the air, shattering the peace that had long enveloped Maplewood. The details were scant at first. A missing child, only 7 years old, had vanished without a trace. Ryan Hargrove had been a bright light in the lives of those around him, and when news of his disappearance spread, it created ripples of dread within every household. Parents hugged their children tighter, exchanging worried glances as they whispered reassurances. Investigators flooded the neighborhood, combing through the labyrinthine alleys and abundant wooded areas that bordered the once quiet community. Flyers adorned with Ryan's cherubic face filled telephone poles and businesses, their garish colors mimicking the urgency of the search. At the center of it all stood Detective Clara Hines, her brow furrowed in concentration, sensing the weight of the looming shadow. For her, this case would reveal the darkness hidden beneath Maplewood's picturesque charm, a truth that would haunt every resident long after the last leaf fell. The victim, Ryan Hargrove, was the kind of child who sparked joy in everyone fortunate enough to cross his path. With a mop of soft brown curls and an infectious smile, he stood out not just for his boyish charm, but for the curious nature that bubbled inside him. He was quick to make friends at Maplewood Elementary, often leading adventurous explorations around the sprawling playground and unofficial territory where imaginations ran wild. His mother, Marissa, described Ryan as a dreamer. He had a knack for storytelling, constructing elaborate worlds filled with superheroes and timeless quests. Each morning, she would find him at the kitchen table, doodling fantastical creatures as the aroma of breakfast danced through their modest home. He loved to draw, his sketches plastered on the refrigerator, deterring the constant tide of grocery lists and appointment reminders. On that fateful October morning, Ryan had been excited, clad in his favorite superhero, Case. He was off to the corner store, just a short walk away, an independence that came with the trust of a vigilant community. Marissa remembered watching him leave, feeling a mix of pride and the natural worry all mothers feel when they let their young ones out into the world. The sun filtered through the trees, illuminating a pathway that seemed to gleam with possibility. But when afternoon sunk into twilight and Ryan failed to return, the snarled web of anxiety tightened around Marissa's heart. As she stood at the end of the driveway, peering down the street, the warm glow of the setting sun quickly faded, replaced by a chilling realization that cast a long shadow over their life. Each tick of the clock transformed from a mundane rhythm into a torrid countdown, a sound that would haunt her forever as the descent into despair began. Crime scene. The air was thick with tension as Detective Clara Hines arrived at Maplewood Park, the designated meeting point for the search parties. Weary-faced volunteers in neon vests gathered, their spirits undermined by uncertainty. As Clara stepped out of her unmarked car, She felt the weight of relentless hope, struggling against the harsh reality looming over their tight-knit community. The park, usually breathing with laughter and merriment, now felt eerily quiet. Leaves crunched underfoot as a small group of officers cordoned off an area near the playground. Clara pulled on her gloves, scanning the scene with a trained eye. The swings stood still, tilted slightly by a gentle breeze, while scattered toys lay strewn out. A soccer ball rolled beneath the slide, where Ryan had been last seen. Her heart clenched as she bent down to inspect the ground. Beneath the swing set was a discarded red baseball cap, small enough to fit a child. It had been crushed against the earth, mimicking the dampness and disorder that accompanied despair. Clara carefully placed it in an evidence bag, the stark contrast of the bright fabric against the dirt a haunting reminder of the little boy who once wore it. The officers methodically searched the brush lining the edge of the park, while Clara began interviewing the concerned community members who had gathered. Their faces reflected panic, anger, and hushed whisper speculation brewing like storm clouds overhead. One elderly woman had been out for her daily walk and mentioned seeing a suspicious vehicle parked nearby earlier that day. The description: a dark minivan, windows tinted enough to conceal whatever secrets lay inside. Clara took note, her instincts igniting a fire within. Every piece of information contributed to a murky picture that she was determined to clarify. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows lengthened, swallowing the park wholly, a stark reminder that this search was just beginning. Time was of the essence, and with each passing moment, Ryan's chance of being found alive dwindled. The early investigation. The following day, Clara convened with her team, a collective of experienced detectives and forensic experts huddled in the local precinct. The conference room was flooded with a harsh fluorescent light, illuminating charts of the neighborhood and a timeline of Ryan's disappearance that seemed to grow denser with each hour. Clara tapped her pen against the table, her mind racing against the clock. "We need to track down that minivan," she said, shifting her gaze toward the wall covered in sketches of the surrounding streets. "Anyone fitting the description needs to be questioned, and we should canvass the neighborhood again, expand our radius to capture all security camera footage." Detective Raymond Liu, a tech-savvy expert with a penchant for digging into digital evidence, nodded thoughtfully. "I'll pull footage from traffic cameras situated on the main street. If that vehicle passed through, it could give us a lead." His fingers danced over his tablet, already preparing to scour the feeds for any signs of the elusive minivan. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued to comb the playground for overlooked evidence. Clara felt a nagging sense of urgency, the constant pricking of her gut screaming that they needed to act decisively. As she moved through the precinct, she caught snippets of phone calls made to parents and guardians, all echoing similar sentiments: how Ryan was cherished by so many, how the community needed to come together. Her mind wandered briefly to Marissa, the frantic mother unraveling in the quiet urgency of her own despair. Among the clutter of concern-filled faces, Clara knew a depth of pain lay within that household, a fear that could challenge the very fabric of a mother's love. She resolved to reach out to Marissa this evening, to remind her that they would not rest until they brought Ryan home. The day slipped into twilight before Clara caught a break. A witness had emerged with critical information. He claimed to have seen a dark minivan parked near the playground just minutes before Ryan vanished. It was the lead they needed, a flicker of light in an encroaching darkness that threatened to consume them all. Clara knew that soon. She would have to decide how far she would go to illuminate the truth. The dead ends. As autumn's chill settled over Maplewood, hope flickered like a candle in the wind. Clara drove through the winding streets under a cloak of dusk. A deep sense of foreboding knotted in her stomach. The description of the dark minivan had led her to a series of addresses, but each visit had resulted in promises of help evaporating into thin air. The latest stop, a cramped apartment complex on the northern edge of town, had been home to a man named Gary Thompson. Gary had a history of fleeting relationships with the law, and when questioned, tripped over his words, claiming he had merely parked his vehicle in the area to visit a friend. Clara had demanded to search his minivan, but found nothing of significant tonneau traces, implying involvement in Ryan's case. Only lingering scents of cheap cologne and a half-empty soda can remained, casting a bitter taste in her mouth. Disheartened, Clara returned to her car, noting the raindrops that began to streak down the windshield like tears. The atmosphere felt stifling, every breath a reminder of the ongoing struggle. She flipped through her notes, flipping from one dead end to another, a repeating cycle of confrontations that bore little fruit. The witness accounts were inconsistent. A few claimed to have seen a child matching Ryan's description, walking beside a stranger, while others asserted they had only glimpsed the deepening shadows that fell over the park. Frustration grew as Clara reconvened with her team, gathering at the precinct for a late-night briefing. Raymond threw up his hands, dismissing the leads they were pursuing. "We can't keep beating around the bush. These tangents lead us nowhere. We need to focus on families and friends, perhaps even the recent social media activity around Ryan." Yet the detective felt a nagging sensation she needed to return to Marissa. Each word exchanged with the frantic mother haunted Clara. She sensed that something deeper, darker, lay beneath the surface of this suburb filled with well-intentioned neighbors. The intimacy of the community felt like a facade, and Clara was determined to strip it back, no matter the cost. With dissatisfaction lingering in the air, she made her way home, the dull throb of her heartbeat echoing the thoughts racing through her mind. Tomorrow, she would touch base with Marissa again, hoping to uncover any slivers of information that could pull them from the spiral of dead ends and back into the light. A break in the case. The winds shifted overnight, carrying a sense of urgency across Maplewood. As dawn broke with the promise of change, Clara sat at her cluttered desk early that morning, poring over social media feeds that had surged with interest since Ryan's disappearance. Images flooded her computer screen, family smiling faces brightening a world that felt dimmer each day without him. She glanced at the clock, determined to follow a new lead. Just after the coffee-stained hour of 10, a call from Raymond pulled her from her thoughts. "You're going to want to see this," he said, his voice steady but electrified with excitement. An anonymous tip just came in, claiming they saw a child fitting Ryan's description in a van parked behind the old bakery last night. Every nerve in Clara fired with determination as she grabbed her coat and hurried out. The precinct's chaos a fading backdrop to her singular purpose. The old bakery lay on the outskirts of town, a relic of Maplewood that had been shuttered for years now, a ghost of thriving community gatherings. Flashes of nostalgia mingled with dread as she recalled the local gatherings held there as a child. As Clara arrived, a small group had already begun to gather, their expressions painted with sentiments of anxiety and anticipation. She cursed quietly under her breath. Location was remote, ensconced by a thicket of trees and shadowed corners, perfect for concealment, but terrifying for the community searching for answers. With Raymond at her side, They inspected the area. The scent of stale flour and dust lingered in the air, mixing with damp earth and rotting leaves. And then they found a crumpled piece of paper fluttered just beneath some broken crates. Clara knelt to retrieve it, realizing it was a grocery list scrawled in hurried handwriting. But it was the name at the bottom that chilled her spine. Ryan Hargrove. Without wasting any time, Clara contacted the local uniformed officers, requesting a nearby canvas. 60 minutes felt like an eternity as she and Raymond combed through every inch of the site. Then she spotted movement nearby, flicker of a curtain behind a window of the bakery's former alleyway office. Her instincts kicked in. As she approached the window, heartbeat racing, the world around her narrowed to the faintest periphery. This could be the breakthrough they desperately needed. Clara exchanged glances with Raymond before rapping briskly on the door. The edges of fate had begun to shimmer, but was it a trap or an opening to the truth? A flaw of unease gripped her, all too aware that the demons creeping in the shadows of Maplewood had no intention of revealing themselves easily. The suspect. As Clara stood outside the weathered door of the bakery's office, her heart thundered. She felt the surge of adrenaline dull her senses and hone her focus. Raymond flanked her, his demeanor steady, ready for whatever lay beyond that thin layer of wood. Clara knocked again, this time more assertively, the sound echoing through the desolate surroundings. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a disheveled man standing at the threshold. His beard was unkempt and the dark circles under his eyes betrayed weeks of sleepless nights. Clara felt a stir of unease wash over her as she scanned the cramped space beyond Himmel flour sacks, strewn about and stray bits of debris littering the floor, remnants of a past that once held life and vitality. "Can I help you?" the man asked, his voice low, barely concealing a tone that reeked of agitation. "Detective Clara Hines," she replied, presenting her badge with careful precision. "We have some questions regarding a missing child, Ryan Hart. We received a tip that a child resembling him was seen near this area last night." At the mention of Ryan's name, the man's expression shifted. A flicker of recognition spiraled through his eyes, quickly masked by a facade of indifference. Clara sensed a crack in his armor, a break worthy of exploration. "Don't know anything about that," he mumbled, his voice rising an octave. "You should check the neighborhood kids. They mess around here sometimes." She wasn't just messing around, Clara pressed, her voice firm yet calm. "You know something, and I suggest you say it now." Raymond stepped into the doorway, creating a subtle boundary that invited an unyielding intensity to the atmosphere. The man shifted, restless beneath the weight of scrutiny. And that's when Clara noticed the tiny red fibers clinging to his shirt, fibers similar to those that adorned Ryan's beloved cap. "Is this yours?" she asked, pointing toward the fabric. "You'd be surprised at how quickly people unravel under pressure." Sweat beaded on the man's brow as he stammered, brushing the fabric off with a twitching hand. "Just found it. Okay, I was gonna throw it out." "Was it you who parked the dark minivan by the park?" Clara asked, her tone shifting to a low, palpable threat. "We need answers, and you're about to give them to us." As the man hesitated, Clara realized this interrogation could either unravel the truth or lead them down a dangerous path. Every passing second felt like an eternity as the shadows of the old bakery echoed secrets of their own. and Clara could sense the tension stretching taut. It was a moment that could define the entire Cassoni's step closer to unearthing the darkness lurking beneath Maplewood's surface. But a moment that could spiral into chaos if the wrong words fell into the wrong ears. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with tension as the trial of Gary Thompson began. Clara sat in the front row, flanked by officers and members of the community, their determined faces a united front in the pursuit of justice for Ryan Hargrove. Clara's heart raced, a chorus of doubt and resolve clashing within her as memories of the young boy's laughter echoed in her mind. As the judge took her seat, the murmur of spectators faded into silence, and Clara studied the man seated at the defendant's table. Gary appeared weary still, his hollow eyes darting around the room, absorbing the gravity of the proceedings. Clara felt the weight of the evidence against him, fibers from Ryan's belongings, witness testimonies, and a confession forced from a tangled web of desperation. The prosecution began by painting a vivid picture of the crime, recounting the events of that fateful day. They displayed images of Ryan's bright face, juxtaposed with evidence collected from both the bakery and Gary's minivan. With each piece presented, Clara could see Marissa's expression shifting in the gallery, pain mingling with simmering anger emotion etched deeply into her features. As the prosecution laid out their case, Clara took notes, her fingers blistering across the notepad. She closely followed the testimony of a key witness, a neighbor who had seen the minivan near the park. His shaky recollections painted a portrait of suspicion, offering just enough doubt to tether Gary to the crime, but not quite clear enough to make a definitive conclusion. Then the defense attorney rose, striding toward the jury with practiced confidence. His tone dripped with skepticism as he scrutinized the evidence laid before them. Isn't it true, ladies and gentlemen, that eyewitness accounts are notoriously unreliable? The state has rushed to judgment without solid proof. Clara felt a swell of frustration as he hinted at misunderstandings. They were navigating a labyrinth of truth and deception. The attorney launched into a strategic dissection of the evidence, attempting to weave a narrative that would cast doubt over the prosecution's Casey ploy to free his client at any cost. But for Clara, this wasn't just about evidence. It was about the memory of a Childa promise made to a mother, a vow to restore the order that had spiraled into chaos. As she watched the jury's reactions, she sensed the pensive uncertainty that hung palpably in the air. Clara's resolve deepened. She wouldn't let Ryan's story be reduced to mere speculation. When her moment came to testify, Clara stood tall. She recounted the events leading up to the arrest, emboldened by her memories of the joy he exuded, the hope he represented. Every parent deserves to know their child is safe, she asserted, her voice unwavering. We owe it to Ryan to seek justice, regardless of the challenges we face. With her mind clear and her purpose fierce, Clara stepped away, feeling like she had injected a piece of humanity back into an otherwise clinical court process. The verdict awaited, a judgment that would ripple through the community, and she could only hope it skewed toward the justice Ryan so rightly deserved, even if uncertainty loomed like clouds above. The promise of sunlight was worth fighting for. The aftermath. The courtroom doors swung shut with a finality that echoed through the cavernous space, leaving Clara and the rest of the audience hanging on the precipice of hope and despair. The jury's deliberation had felt interminable, each tick of the clock amplifying the weight of uncertainty. As the verdict was read, the words reverberated through Clara's curriculum. It shattered the heavy silence, igniting an eruption of mixed emotions that rushed through the room like a vengeful tide. In the wake of that solemn declaration, a bittersweet atmosphere descended on Maplewood. The community came together in mourning and celebration, united in their relief, but not without the sting of grief for the innocents lost. As the news spread through the town, people gathered in their homes, sharing stories of Ryan, recounting the laughter that had echoed in their yards and the joy he had brought into their lives. Clara stood outside the courthouse, her heart heavy yet resolute. She could see Marissa through the crowd, embraced by the arms of sympathetic neighbors, tears shedding freely, yet softened by the embrace of collective solace. Clara approached her, feeling as though they were bound together by invisible threads of mutual strength and loss. "I'm so sorry for all the pain you've endured," Clara said gently as she reached Marissa. "I hope this brings you some measure of peace." Marissa nodded, her face etched with both sorrow and strength. "Thank you, Clara. It's not the end I wanted, but knowing of Gary's guilt brings a flicker of closure." The raw vulnerability in her voice tugged at Clara's heart. They were bound by an ache that would not dissipate, even in the face of justice served. Days turned into weeks, and the town began to heal. Albeit slowly, the playground buzzed back to life. Children once again creating their own small worlds amid laughter and shouts. Yet the shadow of Ryan's absence lingered, a reminder of what had been lost. It served as both a memorial to a boy who had sparked joy and a warning of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface. Clara found herself often visiting the park, where her thoughts, a swirling mix of regret and determination, mingled with the sounds of play. With each passing day, the faces of the children reminded her of her mission: to ensure that no child would have to endure the same fate as Ryan. She established stronger relationships with local schools, developing strategies to address safety and awareness within the community. No longer would Maplewood wear its charm like a veil over reality. Clara saw an opportunity for growth, a foundation built on the shared experience of loss, ensuring that they would stand vigilant against the shadows that could encroach upon their lives. Together, they would reclaim hope, refusing to let fear reside in a town that still deserved joy. As Clara glanced at the children, the future danced playfully before her. In the haunting absence of one little boy, she felt the brewing resilience of a community, slowly awakening from the depths of sorrow, a promise of rebirth, emerging like the first blossom of spring after the frost. Reflection. Months passed since the verdict, and the seasons ebbed and flowed, each one a testament to resilience and the healing process that Maplewood had begun to embrace. Clara often found herself contemplating the winding journey that had brought them to this defining moment, and the toll it had exacted on everyone involved. Sitting on a bench at the park, she observed the children play, their laughter punctuating the air like music, a stark contrast to the lingering shadows of the past. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to reflect on the choices made, the interviews, the moments of hope and despair. the faces of concerned parents etched in her memory. Each decision had been both a burden and a calling, a reminder that in the line of duty, there existed a greater purpose, a drive to safeguard the innocent. The echoes of Ryan's laughter, now only a distant memory, served as a constant reminder of the fragile thread that wove the community together. The pain of his loss would never truly fade, though Clara found comfort in witnessing the town's transformation. Parents had become more vigilant. Conversations about safety became commonplace with their children. Even Marissa started a foundation in Ryan's name, focused on child safety awareness, ensuring his legacy would endure, turning tragedy into a force for good. Clara felt a sense of pride rising within her. Through the grief, they had discovered strength. As she contemplated the future, she knew the work was far from over. But with every heartbeat of the community and every joyful giggle echoing through the park, there was a shared understanding they would continue to fight for a safer world, united in purpose and in remembrance. All would contribute to a collective spirit that would not be easily extinguished.